What is up, everyone? I am back. I know it's been a while since I've made a video, and trust me, if you've been chomping at the bits asking yourself, yo, when's my man Anthony gonna make another one? When's he gonna drop another video? I've been loving the shit so far. You are not alone. It's been gnawing at me too, and I'm glad to finally be getting back into my groove here. I've had a lot of stuff on my plate regarding my business that I had to take care of in the back end. I was busy building out some technical systems from scratch, which took like a good month or two to do, working around the clock. So as soon as I was about to drop another video, I caught the flu or some shit, which I've been battling for a good 2 weeks or so now, but I'm finally feeling better. By the way, for those of you who also moved to Brazil from the US or from another country, drop a comment and let me know, did you guys find yourself getting sick a lot at first, like catching the cold or flu or other bugs initially? I had a few other Americans living here telling me that when they first moved here, they were catching colds and stuff like that left and right until their bodies, you know, got more adjusted to the new flora and fauna of Brazil. But anyway, I wanted to make another video about what I love about Brazil so far. I don't want this video to be long, so I'm breaking it into 2 parts, and part 2 will be about some of the things that I don't like necessarily, or maybe things that have been culturally difficult to adjust or relate to. I've had a lot of people reaching out to me or contacting me, asking me about how they can move to Brazil, what it's like, everything from people wanting to move here to be with a romantic partner, or a family member, or maybe they're thinking about retiring here, or just, you know, being a sort of digital nomad or expat. And I wanted to give you guys the scoop on my personal experience so far, you know, because moving to another country can be an incredible life-changing experience. It's an adventure. You get out of your comfort zone. You expose yourself to new experiences and cultures and foods, new languages and relationships. So, but it isn't always fun or exciting or a good time, even in a fun, loving, and exciting place like Brazil. And I don't want to give any false impressions up to this point or going forward that Brazil is a perfect country or a perfect place, because anyone will tell you, be it expats or native Brazilians, that nobody would ever say Brazil is a perfect country. In fact, no country is perfect, as I've said before. But spoiler alert for me, with any and all of the things here that I would consider to be flaws, I don't see myself leaving Brazil, and overall I've been happy to call it my home and a place that I would eventually like to truly settle down. So I've been living here for over 1.5 years now, and I've got a legitimate business registered here. I've been looking at properties and other opportunities, and have other plans in general to grow not only my future here, but plans to really contribute to the social and economic growth of my city and the country overall. So also be mindful of the fact that I do not know everything about Brazil. I've got a relatively limited experience in the country relative to how huge Brazil is. In fact, most Brazilians still have plenty to learn about the country. It's so huge and has so much to offer, with like many different regions, dialects, and you know, regional norms, cultures, and it would be hard to completely know Brazil within one's lifetime, unless that was your full-time job or some shit. And that's not what I intend to do. So everything that I'm going to be talking about is almost like a first impression summary of some of the things that other foreigners may quickly learn or notice or encounter. So with that being said, let's hop into it. Now, I'm mentioning this one first because it's one of the things that I first noticed when I visited Brazil, and that is the beautiful landscape, right? Before I even moved here permanently, I'll never forget waking up on the airplane as I was like over Brazil, about 40 minutes away from landing still, and being completely blown away when I looked out my window because, you know, your boy had to get the window seat for that premium nap time experience. But I remember looking out and I remember looking out the window as we were over Brazil, and I was completely blown away by how beautiful and lush and green the landscape was. You had all this jungle and forest, and as far as you could see, like with big lakes and bodies of water and rivers kind of breaking things up. Brazil is gorgeous. It's a gorgeous country. Now, I'm personally not a fan of Rio de Janeiro, but if you've seen pictures of it or if you've been there yourself, you know how visually appealing and beautiful the city and landscape looks. You've got a beautiful beach surrounded by ocean with rocks and mountains coming out over the water, mountains just covered in forests surrounding the city. It's absolutely stunning. Brazilian beaches are some of the best in the world, and they actually get even better outside of just the tourist spots and tourist traps that you might see. To really see the beauty and vibes of Brazil and everything that Brazil has to offer, you really have to get in touch with the locals because Brazilians know where the true hidden good spots are. I've been to some of the most beautiful spots and like resorts that literally zero foreigners know about unless they learned it from a Brazilian. I feel like most gringos tend to only know like Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, maybe Salvador in the Northeast, but Brazil has some of the most gorgeous beaches and forests and overall landscape in the world. Overall, the country is just an extremely visually appealing place, and that's definitely one of the things that I love about it. The next one is going to be the Brazilian people and culture. And this one's next because I'd say it's the second thing that I noticed when I got here. The Brazilian people tend to be very welcoming, sociable, and they value relationships. As an American who comes from a culture that would be considered more cold and detached compared to a region like Latin America, I have to say that this has been a very refreshing thing to encounter and like deal with. When I first landed in Brazil, I actually didn't speak a lick of Portuguese, and although I quickly realized that I would basically have to learn the language, and immediately I started doing such, the amount of like patience and warm welcoming friendliness that I received as I stumbled over words and sentences was nice, and it was encouraging. I have to say, after learning Portuguese and now that I'm able to actually communicate and form relationships with people that don't even speak English at all, that sentiment has only proven itself to be more true. Even as a very introverted person that I am, I've had no problem making friends, chatting with strangers. There's just an overall more of a sense of like community here. Like I actually would call my barber a friend. He and his wife invited me to go out for some drinks one night after he cut my hair. I exchanged contact info with 2 people at my local bakery that I'm a regular at. I've been able to meet people and have a great time with them after meeting them during nights out, and they hit you up and they invite you to barbecues and stuff like that the next day or that weekend. Brazilians truly enjoy connection in their relationships and are often willing to try to help you out with the things that you need, even if they are complete strangers. If you're a foreigner, I've definitely noticed that there's often a curiosity and an interest about who you are, where you come from, how your life has been faring in the country. Brazilians are just overall super warm, friendly. They have no problem telling you how they feel, good or bad, and they just overall enjoy a good time. The Brazilian culture is super rich. Their traditions, holidays, they're all super interesting. And they all have some root in history, which as a history nerd, I love. They love to dance, they love to sing. And overall, it's just a warm, sort of extroverted, affectionate culture. It's still something that I have to get used to sometimes. As an introvert, it can sometimes even be a bit overwhelming or draining. But overall, I think the Brazilian people and cultural experience and all of that are just a huge plus of being here. The next thing I'm going to mention is the diversity. This one's kind of related to the people thing, but I'm going to put it into a different category because I think it deserves it. And yeah, that's the diversity of Brazil. And the reason why I'm putting this into its own thing is because it's not just the diversity of people, but of like cultures and foods and language and diversity of fashion and the way people carry themselves based on the region that you're in. Now you might say, oh, every country has differences and diversity depending on where you go. And yes, that is true, but Brazil is definitely one of those countries where the language, the food, the overall lifestyle can change drastically depending on where you are. I think people not familiar with Brazil think that Brazilians are mostly like brown and black people or natives, but Brazil is extremely ethnically diverse. due to all the immigrants and of course the slave trade that happened here. You've got tons of Africans, tons of native people, Europeans from like Germany, Italy, Ukraine, Poland, and even a ton of Asians. A lot of people don't know this, but outside of Japan, Brazil has the highest population of Japanese people, right? Like besides Japan, the next biggest concentration of Japanese people will be found here in Brazil. There's tons of them here, lots of Japanese culture and lots of Japanese influence, especially in the communities that they've created. It's dope, it's super dope. You've got people of all races and backgrounds here, which means you have access to a lot of different like foods and stuff like that, which food is super important to me. The next thing I'm gonna mention is something I think is a huge plus about Brazil and something that I really like, and that is the values that Brazil and Brazilians tend to have. And this actually goes for a lot of Latin America and the global South in general, but Brazil definitely maintains those traditional values that I think are good and important for maintaining like a solid family structure and just your relationships in general. In the US, and this is something that I struggle with almost on a daily basis, but in the US, like life moves very fast. There's a big emphasis on putting, money first. It's almost like money and hustling is always going to be above all else. And I think it's really taken a toll on a lot of people and on a lot of families and relationships. And these days, it's not even out of greed or people wanting to be rich, but the economic situation in the US has gotten so bad that people are basically forced to constantly be on the grind just to barely get by and make rent and bills and stuff like that. So something I do love about Brazil is that they value family time. They value having damn near weekly get-togethers with friends or family. People will have dinners and lunches or often barbecues, and I think it just does a lot to keep people connected and maintain that sense of community and family. And these values also spill over into like romantic relationships as well and dating. I think when it comes to dating, there's still a big emphasis on like traditional values. And some of you might not like this or agree with it, but there is that sense of like having traditional roles in a relationship, which I personally think is healthy and natural. Yes, Brazil is very progressive in many ways, but when it comes to relationships, there is that sense of like having your responsibility to take care of your partner or your family or friends in a way that you're, supposed to. I personally think it's a breath of fresh air compared to the dating scene in the US, where men and women are like pretty much at their throats all the time now and just kind of confused about what their role or identity is in a relationship. Everyone's confused and pissed off and they don't know why, and it's like, well, but I love that life here is not always about the hustle, and getting rich and famous, and it's really about prioritizing the people in your life. As an American that grew up in a culture where things are often very disconnected, I do struggle with this to this day and often find myself having to like conscientiously take a break. Spend time replying to messages and making sure I catch up with my friends and my family, because I'm kind of naturally inclined to like want to work and get stuff done and hustle all the time myself. But yeah, Brazilians love to have any reason to celebrate or like have a get together or a party. Even when things are looking bad or down, there's a sense of like really valuing joy and spontaneity over formalities and being orderly all the time. And all right, so for the last thing that I'm going to talk about regarding what I love about Brazil are the accessible social systems and safety nets and the sort of like social infrastructure here in the sense of like taking care of people. And that involves things like healthcare, education, public transportation. Obviously being an American, I'm a bit traumatized by what could only be described as the world's worst, biggest scam of a healthcare system that exists in the US. But I never realized how much of like a mental relief it is knowing that if you ever need healthcare in Brazil, you can simply go to the doctor and get taken care of with the public healthcare system here. What a novel idea, right? Like taking care of the health of your countrymen and countrywomen. But yeah, it's sad seeing how many people in the US end up dying basically because problems weren't detected soon enough, because the person was scared of the bill they would receive after going to the doctor. Brazil's public free healthcare system is relatively good. And if you want private health insurance, it's extremely affordable and you will be taken care of. And that goes for general doctors, dentists, optometrists, or any kind of like specialist that you might need. You're gonna be able to go to the doctor here without worrying about going bankrupt. Additionally, you have their higher education system, which is also basically free. I know, another novel idea, right? Wow, it's crazy thinking that you would want an educated population, right? but you can attend the public universities here completely free if you pass the right exams, have the right prerequisites in order. And I'm actually looking at potentially going to law school right now, maybe within the next year or two. But there's also private universities which are extremely affordable, high quality, and if you do well on certain entrance exams, they'll even give you like a 50 to 60 or even 100% off of your tuition at those private universities. And I think that's important, like knowledge is power, education is power, and it's incredible that you can like have the opportunity to grow yourself in that way if you so choose without breaking the bank or going into tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. Right. Another thing that's pretty good about Brazil's sort of like social or mobility infrastructure is the public transportation, particularly in the larger cities. Sao Paulo, for example, has one of the best underground rail systems in the world, and most big cities have great bus systems that like run regularly. They allow you to not only get around the city, but between cities across the country as well. Like I'm actually going to be traveling to another city soon for some business, going to Florianopolis and Sao Paulo as well. And I'll show you guys how nice that long distance bus system is. But yeah, getting around major Brazilian cities without a car is completely feasible and affordable. I actually bought a car when I moved to Brazil and recently sold it because I was barely even using it. Most cities have their own neighborhoods and communities where you can pretty much get everything you need or want within walking distance. It's not only great for your health, but it's good for the environment and overall just like hella convenient. It's nice knowing that you can live an easy life, a quality life here without like ever needing a car. And for those times that you do want to take a trip somewhere far or like explore places that public transportation wouldn't be able to take you, you can always just rent a car or something for fairly cheap. Now, lastly, I wanted to talk about some things that you may love or hate about Brazil, just depending on who you are. These aren't objectively bad or good, but just things to consider when visiting or moving to Brazil. Now, the first one of these is going to be the weather. Now, because Brazil is such a huge country and it spans a lot of like vertical territory, there will be massive differences based on where you are in the country. In the north of Brazil, closer to the equator, you are going to have very hot, tropical, humid weather. Think like Amazon rainforest type shit, or like Florida, or really the southern parts of the United States in general. During certain seasons throughout the country, you can have some pretty crazy rainstorms, especially during the summer. Summer is rain season, so lots of rain, thunder, lightning, strong winds, all of that. But as you move more to the south of Brazil, the weather does get more mild and even straight up freezing cold during the winter. I personally like colder weather, which is why I'm here in the city Curitiba. But for those of you who prefer year-round warm weather and sun and all of that, you'd probably be better off in a place like Rio de Janeiro, Salvador, Sao Paulo, Belo Horizonte, Florianopolis, cities like that. The next thing I want to talk about is the food. Now, a lot of you might be surprised that this wasn't part of the list of things that I love about Brazil, but Brazilian food can definitely be hit or miss depending on what you like. I would say that overall, the Brazilian palate is not really used to spices. And as a person who grew up with a Mexican family that has always enjoyed like extremely spicy foods from Central America, Asia, the Middle East, all that, I gotta say it's been a little hard to find like spicy food. And even if you don't necessarily like spicy food, as many people that will tell you, a lot of people will tell you they love Brazilian cuisine. Many foreigners I've talked to also said that they find Brazilian foods to be either a little bit too sweet or too salty or straight up bland. Now, as with most things regarding Brazil, the cuisine can vary wildly, as certain foods are particular to like certain regions. For example, I've typically heard that in the north and the northeast of Brazil, which has a lot more African influence, the food there is amazing. I've even tried a few of those dishes and I did like them. So Brazil in general excels tremendously when it comes to grilled meats, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, great rice, some of the best absolute best coffee in the world here. I mean, they are a huge exporter of coffee to places like the United States. But yeah, there's nothing I love more than going to restaurants and churrascarias and having just tons of amazing meats and salads. The food in Brazil is overall very fresh, and there is overall a lot of great food in Brazil. However, from my experience, it's generally not a place where you can throw a dart at the board and just accidentally stumble upon like a great restaurant. Like you have to kind of know where to go. Ask recommendations from the locals, ask me, and you'll be squared away. There's a lot of good high cuisine and even good like cheap boteco foods and stuff like that. But if you're used to having that like explosive flavor, intense spice and all of that, you're going to be left like wanting in Brazil, since most Brazilians do seem to have like kind of an aversion to spice. A lot of my favorite restaurants are actually owned by foreigners and like immigrants who serve their own country's foods, and a lot of them did say that they had to like kind of adjust their recipes a bit to appeal more to the Brazilian palate, especially if it's a cultural food that's more spicy. The next aspect I'm going to cover about Brazil that's going to depend on who you are or where you're from is going to be the cost of living. Now, for Americans and Europeans and like people from wealthier, more developed countries, the cost of living in Brazil is going to be nothing for you. It's an amazing country if you earn money remotely, or if you're retired or looking to retire in Brazil. Brazil is going to be an amazing option for you. As the cost of living and the quality of life you'll be able to achieve with as little as like $1,500 a month will be pretty good. However, if you're Brazilian or from another developing country, you would be surprised to find that although Brazil is technically considered like a developing country, it's not the cheapest. And in fact, it's straight up expensive at times. Brazil is the biggest country in South America, with the largest economy, the biggest GDP, and in general things do cost more compared to places like in Southeast Asia or Africa or other developing countries. For me personally, I can live very well with my income, but if you're looking to do the most budget-friendly traveling or looking for the cheapest place to live or move to, Brazil would not be good for you. I would say if you earn like $1,500 a month, that's great for a comfortable life, and anything over like $2,000, $2,500 USD a month, you're gonna be pretty golden. And last but not least is going to be the fact that the concept of time it really doesn't exist in Brazil, and the pace of life is very slow. Now, the reason I'm putting this under the depends on you category is because for some people, that's exactly what they're looking for. And for others, it may be irritating. In Brazil, like most of South America or Latin America, the global South in general, things tend to move very slow. Now, some people, especially those of you in the US looking for a more chill lifestyle, this will be great for you. As I touched on earlier, life in the US is very much hustle and bustle, fast paced, and things and life move fast in the US. In Brazil, it's not uncommon to like schedule a repair person or some kind of service, and they give you some giant time window. Like, I'll be there sometime between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. And even then, they might not even end up coming, or they might end up canceling. When you're at restaurants, expect your food and drinks to come much slower than in places like the US or Europe. In fact, sometimes I will order a drink, and when it arrives, I'll order my next one before I even start my first one, just so that my next drink is ready by the time I want it. So when dealing with businesses and government and stuff like that, it's not uncommon for things to sometimes take a long time to get done, or to hear back with like status updates. This isn't all the time, but it's not like, uncommon. Both people on a personal level and on like the business level tend to take their time with stuff, and they don't really have a sense of urgency here. For me personally, it's a big annoyance because I move fast. I like to get shit done, get done quickly, and get things done well. But in Brazil, sometimes both the time and quality of work, business, and life in general can just kind of like take a dive, and it can be very slow. As a business owner myself, I found it quite difficult dealing with like other businesses here due to the fact that they drag their asses, and I kind of need to stay on top of them and stay on top of things. But if this doesn't bother you, or you're not constantly in like go mode like me, this can actually be a refreshing change of pace and positive. So take all of this as you will. When I'm old and retired and like coasting along, this is something I imagine I will be perfectly fine with. But as the young, handsome buck that I am right now, I'm trying to grow, and also coming from the like tech industry and startups where things move very quick, sometimes for me this can be a bit of an annoyance. In any case, I hope y'all enjoyed this video and that you got some insight into what you might like about Brazil. I'm actually going to make another video about my more personal challenges and like personal growth having moved to Brazil. I hope you guys stay tuned for that as well. And additionally, like I said, I'll be dropping a part 2 to this video where I talk about the things that I do not like about Brazil. And yeah, as always, please like this video, subscribe. It's completely free way to support the channel if you enjoy the content so far. And it helps with making more content, and it inspires me. So I got a lot coming for you guys, and I will be dropping another video this weekend actually with some nightlife and social scene stuff with some of my friends here, my community here. So I hope y'all enjoy that. If you're interested in moving to Brazil, or if you live in Brazil already and you're looking for like an international community to make friends, practice Portuguese or practice English if you're Brazilian, have fun nights out and all that, make sure you guys hop into our Discord where we've been kicking it, planning events and hangouts and so forth. It's been great watching the community grow, and it's been cool meeting some of you guys, and you do not want to miss out. So if you're interested in moving to Brazil, also be sure to check out the link in the description where you can schedule a one-on-one with me, and we'll discuss like where you are, where you want to be, and me and my team will help you travel or move to Brazil entirely so that you don't have to do a thing except plan your arrival date and enjoy your time or your move here. With all that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.